In geometry, we use a lot of terminology throughout the year, so it is very important that we have a good foundation and understand what the terms mean, and more importantly, know how to write about them so that way later on in the course, when you see a certain symbol, you know what that symbol means and you can use it appropriately. So first we have some undefined terms. And the reason why they are undefined terms is because there's really no way to define them without using the word itself. So a point that refers to a specific location. Think of it as a dot. It's like we'd have point A, point B, point C, point F. So the notation is a capital letter. So all these are capital letters. You would not do point F like that. You could also, if you're writing about it, say the words point F. Real life examples. Think about any time you have a specific dot. Points on a map. That would be an example of a point. Now, a line is we all know what a line looks like, but mathematically it's a line that goes forever in both directions. So what that would look like geometrically would be something like this, where we have 2 points and they're connected by a line. Notice the line keeps going after the points, and we have arrows. You could also write it like that, a lowercase cursive letter. So the notations of it, how you'd write about it, would be AF. Notice that we have the capital letters and the line above it, or you could go FA. You could go in the opposite direction. The order doesn't matter when it comes to lines. So that means the same thing. Or if we're talking about this golden one, we could do line L. And it could be any cursive letter. It could be R, S, T, M, N, whatever. Some real life examples of lines. Think about the streets. Yes, the streets eventually do end, but if we think about, for the most part, in our perspective, the street just keeps going. And the last definition is a plane. So think of a plane as a flat surface, your desk, your piece of paper, the wall, except that it extends forever in all directions. So if we have a plane, so any surface, we could label it by 3 points in the plane, or we could name it with a capital cursive letter or superscript letter, something that looks like that. So the way we would write this, we would say, write out the words plane CSF or plane FSC. The order doesn't matter, so I'm not going to write down all the other ones. It's just these 3 points are in this green plane, so we just got to use any 3 of those. And notice that these 3 planes are not on the same line. You can't draw a line that connects all 3 of these points. And then we can write plane K. then is another way to write it. And examples of that, like I said, would be your desk, paper, wall, stuff like that, flat surfaces. So using those undefined terms, we have a couple defined terms that we can talk about. So a line segment is basically part of a line. So up here we had line AF, and it kept going forever because we had these arrows here. A line segment would be just the stuff in between AF. So the geometric figure of that would be AF or JK. There is no second type of naming, like you can't do a cursive letter at the end like we did for lines. So you could write it, when we write this in notation, we have JK, and on top we just do a bar to note that it's a line segment. Notice there are no arrows at the end, it's just a bar for the line segment. So that is how you would notate this. Real life examples, if you look at your floor right now, if it's any type of wood or tile, there's lines in it, but they eventually end when you get to the next tile or to the next plank of wood. So those are line segments. So you could say floor tiles, or anything like that. So we use these terms a lot in geometry. Like you will need to be able to know that down here we're talking about line segments, and that's how we write them. But up here we're talking about lines, and the way we know that we're talking about lines is because of what we see up above. That's how we know we're talking about lines and not line segments. And same thing with planes. So this is very important that you are able to differentiate between these terms. On this page, we will use those terms from the previous page and apply them to talk about this figure. So we're going to give another name for plane Z. So plane Z is this whole thing right here. And another name of it would be plane, and I can pick any 3 points that are not on the same line. So I could say plane P and L, or plane PMN. Any 3 points that are not on the same line. Notice I didn't use point Q because Q is outside of my box here. The next one, give another name for line segment QM. Well, here's line segment QM. So the only other name for that would be segment MQ, because it's asking about a segment, not a line. Name a point that is not on plane Z. So plane Z again is this area that I outlined. The only point that is not in the plane is up here. That's point Q. Now you may be saying, well, what about this A down here? Well, that's a lowercase a, so that is not a point down here. That's just talking about this line, that one of the names for it could be line A. Next one, give 2 other names for line LN. So we could do line NL, just reverse the letters. Or we could talk about this lowercase letter here. So here's the line I'm talking about. you could say, or line B. Either one is okay. And then finally, give another name for line A. Line A is right here. So we could say line QM or line MQ. Notice how this looks different than letter B, where letter B we just have those bars on top, and down here in letter E we have an actual arrows on those lines. So let's look at example 2. We're going to give another name for segment YZ. Well, we can just reverse the letters and say segment ZY. Segment YZ and ZY, they are the same thing. And then B, name all the ways. So we're going to have multiple answers that you could name line VX. So here's VX. And the line goes forever. So we could say line XV. We could say line R. And the others that I'm going to talk about kind of tie into letter C, where, if I'm going to say line WX. You may be saying, well, line WX isn't the same thing because they're two different points. I have W instead of V. Well, remember, a line goes forever in each direction. So if I were to draw or outline line WX, it would look like this because the line would keep going forever. So that is the same line. So you can have line WX, line XW. We could also say, well, what about line VW? That follows the same thing, and you'd be right. So VW and WV. And then we kind of already answered C. Are lines WY and ZY the same? WY and ZY the same? Yes, they are the same because of what we talked about in letter B. Yes. The lines, let's see how we want to word this. The lines contain the same points. And extend forever. All right, now example 3. Name the intersection of line MX and line A. So here's line MX, and here's line A. So where do they touch? They touch at this point here, point M. And then name the intersection of plane C and plane D. So, okay, here's plane D, and here's plane C. So where do they overlap? Where do they touch? They're touching right here at this line. So line A. Okay, so then we're going to go in reverse. We were looking at pictures and writing um, some things we noticed about pictures or how to name some things. Now I want us to look at some wording and draw a picture based on that. So the first one says point K lies on line YT. So what I'm going to do first is I'm going to draw a line and put YT. And it says point K lies on that. It doesn't say that point K is in the middle or in between Y and T, so you could put K anywhere. And this would be a correct diagram. This one, lines Q and lines TJ intersect at point C. So I'm going to start by drawing two lines that intersect. We know they intersect at point C. One of the lines is just line Q, and the other one is line TJ. Now, what I want you to notice is that when we name lines with lowercase letters, you see how I put the letter at the very end of the line? I could have put it down here as well, and it would have meant the same thing, but I'm not going to write it like right here. That's just not how we do it. When we're talking about naming lines with points, we're naming the points right where they are on the graph. So I'm not going out here and doing, TJ. So that is something else that you should pay attention to. So I know this was a lot, especially for the first day of geometry, but it is important that you understand the difference between all these terms and what they look like. I hope you enjoyed the video. Make sure you smash the like button and subscribe.